At the beginning of the season, as usual, numerous clubs entertained aspirations of celebrating success by its conclusion, or at the very least, of having made significant improvements from the previous year. But as you'll be able to tell, the 10 big clubs that I'm about to show you today have had seasons to forget, with a few of them still battling to avoid relegation. With that in mind, we're Thorn FC, and these are 10 big football teams that are having terrible seasons. Number 10, Chelsea. Last year, Chelsea shocked the world with their abysmal performances that led to a historic 12th place finish. No matter how much they spent in January, things only got worse, but at the time, there were still a lot of optimistic fans that believed that the new signings only needed time to adjust to the Prem. Then in the summer, they doubled down on their pay-to-win approach, leading many to anticipate a notable improvement in Chelsea's league form, especially considering they were free from the burden of midweek European matches. However, the reality has been starkly different. Chelsea's league position has shown no signs of improvement. The Blues struggle to put together any form of winning streak, and as of the time of this video, they languish in 11th place in the league, with diminishing hopes of securing a European spot next season. A result that fans consider the bare minimum for a club that has invested nearly £1 billion since the summer of 2022. Number 9, Napoli. I don't know about you, but I never thought that Napoli could win back-to-back Serie A titles. The pressure increased, they lost their manager, their best defender, but I never thought they would go down the way they did. First of all, the raid on their squad wasn't even that massive to begin with. Out of all the players who left, only Kim Min-jae had a great role in last year's Scudetto triumph. Then the manager they chose was just completely out of pocket. Instead of picking a promising manager from the league or finding an experienced veteran willing to continue Spalletti's work, they go for Rudi Garcia, who at this point is merely living off his past glories. And to cap it all off, they alienate their best player and practically guarantee that by next year, if Napoli finishes in 7th, nobody will feel disappointed anymore. Number 8, FC Basel. If you started watching football in the last decade, you'll probably be accustomed to seeing Basel perform well in European competitions, especially the Champions League. After all, they were the powerhouse that dominated Swiss football for well over a decade, but nowadays their situation is quite grim. With just a few matches left to play in the regular season, Basel will most likely enter the second stage of the campaign, fighting to avoid relegation to Switzerland's second tier. And given the current precarious financial state and lack of fan support, it wouldn't be that unlikely that the once powerful Basel would enter the darkest period in their entire history. Number 7, Barcelona. I'm well aware of Barcelona's financial difficulties, as much as I know that Real Madrid is simply on another level for the current Spanish reality. But that doesn't serve as an excuse for Barca's atrocious campaign. Los Culés have been outdone both defensively and offensively by Girona, a club with 4 times less the market value of Barcelona. And while you could say that things are better in Europe, that has more to do with the opponents they have faced than the quality of play they've shown. If you've been paying attention, you know that Napoli are in shambles, Porto are decent right now, but when Barca faced them, they didn't have a centre-back partner for Pepe. And Antwerp and Shakhtar, well, they're just simply not Champions League caliber teams. Either way, there are a couple of positives worth pointing out. Barca appears to be more conservative in their transfer moves, and there seems to be a greater focus on making the most out of players that were initially labelled as flops. I'm very interested to see what the future holds for the historic Spanish Giants and how they'll perform in the UCL quarterfinals. Number 6, Newcastle United. I don't know what's worse anymore, Chelsea or Newcastle. To be honest, I actually had great hopes for the Magpies this season. Although they were put in a group of death in Europe, I felt that they could upset their opponents, considering they had built a solid team for the Premier League level. But reality proved to be much harsher for the Magpies. Their best players dropped out of form, their biggest signing flopped, not because of his performances on the field or due to injuries, but simply because he couldn't keep himself away from betting apps. Add recurring injuries in the team to the mix and you get a season to forget, without a decent European campaign and without qualifying to the next one. Number 5, Bayern Munich. For years, Bayern has dominated the Bundesliga with just a few scars in the middle. Just to put into perspective for how long Bayern has toyed with German football, Gaultier, Macklemore, and f***ing LMFAO were the biggest names in the music industry when Bayern failed to win the Bundesliga for the last time. And now, 12 years later, we might finally have a new team winning the league. This doesn't come as a complete surprise, as Bayern have failed to replace their raging stars in the past few seasons, and some might even claim that the Bavarians got way too comfortable for their own good. Last season, Bayern only won the league due to Dortmund's incompetence, and even though they made a massive improvement in their attacking front with the arrival of Harry Kane, the board's decision to constantly fire coaches is being extremely detrimental to the club's future. I'm not inside the locker room, so take this with a grain of salt, but the raging prima donnas appear to have way too much influence. Real Madrid, for example, has no problem ruthlessly replacing their stars, no matter how iconic they were, and that's why they're always ahead of the curve. Bayern is clinging to past glories when they should have just stuck with Nagelsmann and give him the support he needed to create a new era in Munich. Number 4. Sevilla. Ever since the beginning of the new millennium, Sevilla became a powerful force in Spanish football, constantly qualifying to European competitions and even becoming the most successful Europa League side of all time with 7 trophies. However, it appears that those days are now gone. Sevilla finished their 2022-23 La Liga campaign in 11th place, but that poor result got overshadowed by yet another Europa League triumph. This season though, there will be no saving graces for Sergio Ramos' team, who at the time of making this video are sitting just 6 points above the relegation zone. To make it even worse, Sevilla couldn't even grab a 3rd place spot in their Champions League group composed by Arsenal, PSV and Lens. The Andalusian club is rapidly downgrading, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him in Spain's 2nd tier in just a few years' time. Number 3. Ajax. Oh boy. Where do I even begin? At the start of their 23-24 campaign, Ajax were arguably even worse than nowadays. They spent a good portion of the season hovering the relegation spots until eventually they managed to pick up a decent run of form. The Dutch Giants were able to climb up the table, but they're still 16 points away from the podium and 29 away from 1st place. This is even more shocking considering that Ajax spent the vast majority of the last decade dominating the eredivisie, and when you look at their European campaign, the reality doesn't look much better either. They couldn't finish above Marseille and Brighton in the Europa League, barely survived the dramatic tie with Bodo Glimt, and now they were unceremoniously eliminated by Aston Villa from the Conference League. Another trophyless season and another step towards rock bottom. Number 2. Al-Ittihad. Although Al Nassr has also endured a disappointing campaign, Ittihad's woes are arguably even worse. Let's not forget they're still the reigning defending champions, but their strategy for this season looked like it was made by an amateur team. They replaced their foreign players with stars, but they didn't take into consideration if they would fit together or not. Luck wasn't on their side either. They lost both starting 11 center backs and were forced to sign Luis Felipe, which made the Jota signing completely useless due to the limits on foreign players in the team. And guess what? Luis Felipe also got injured. Benzema collided with Nuno, with a board, and expected to be treated better, but his performances have also been extremely disappointing. It's been awful for Ittihad fans, with most hoping there hadn't been any rebuild in the first place. Number 1. Manchester United. It never gets better, does it? For 10 years now, United has promised their fans that in the present season things would improve. And it's not like there was no investment on new signings. Onana, Mount, Højlund all came into the club for hefty fees, and with the exception of the Danish striker, their campaigns have been pretty average. I get that Ten Hag needs time to implement his vision, but come on, it's flop signing after flop signing, only to end up with a Carabao Cup. Last season, Man United could at least say they won a trophy and qualified to the Champions League. But this season, their return to the Premier European competition was abysmal, finishing dead last behind Copenhagen and Galatasaray. While in the league, there's simply no way they'll be able to crack the top 4. So now the question stands, does Ten Hag deserve another year in charge? Let me know your opinion in the comments so we can start the discussion. Drop a like if you want to watch more content like this, and subscribe to never miss the most interesting football videos on YouTube. Thanks for watching till the end, I appreciate you, and I will see you soon.